For a brand new piglet, those first few weeks, they're the most dangerous time of its entire life. But the biggest threats? They're not what you'd expect. In fact, their deadliest enemies are completely invisible.
So what are a piglet's greatest enemies? I mean, your mind probably jumps to predators, right? Or maybe the cold. But the real danger? It's way more sneaky. And believe me, the answer is a lot more complicated than you'd think.
Yeah, because the biggest threats, they're just too small to see. We are literally talking about a microscopic war, a battle being fought right there in the farrowing house. And for a piglet that's only days old, the stakes couldn't be higher.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand these invisible enemies, we gotta know who we're dealing with. So think of this as a profile of a piglet's first and deadliest foes. Okay, so our rogues gallery basically breaks down into a few main players. You've got your bacteria. These are microscopic, single-celled bugs that just multiply like crazy. Then you've got protozoa, which are these single-celled parasites that act like little hijackers, moving right into the piglet's own cells. Now, a lot of these baddies create spores. The best way to think of these is like armored seeds. They're super tough, incredibly hard to kill with disinfectants. And the worst part? Their weapons of choice are toxins. These are just potent poisons that the bacteria produce, and that's what actually causes the disease.
So, to make sense of all this, let's group these enemies by how they attack. First up, we're going to talk about the ones that cause the most obvious problems, the gut wreckers. And yeah, that name pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
The main weapon of these gut wreckers is something called enteritis. All that means is a really nasty inflammation of the intestine. And this is just devastating for a little piglet. Because when the gut lining gets inflamed and damaged, it can't absorb any nutrients. And that leads to exactly what you'd expect: severe diarrhea and really fast, life-threatening dehydration.
Figuring out which one of these is the culprit is absolutely critical. And honestly, timing is everything. So check out our suspect lineup. The first two, C. perfringens and C. difficile, are both bacteria and they hit fast, right after birth, in the first few days. C. perfringens type C is a particularly nasty one, causing really bad, often bloody diarrhea. But then you've got our third suspect, coccidiosis. This one's a parasite, and it waits a little longer, usually hitting piglets after they're about a week old. And here's the dead giveaway. The diarrhea it causes just doesn't respond to antibiotics. Why? Well, because it's not a bacterium.
And that timing is so important. For something like Clostridium perfringens type C, that window of danger is just incredibly small. We're talking about the first 24 to 72 hours of life. That's when a newborn's immune system is basically non-existent, especially if they didn't get enough of that crucial first milk, the colostrum, from mom.
Now, let's flip that. Compare that tiny window to our other gut wrecker, coccidiosis. It goes after a totally different age group, piglets that are between 1 and 3 weeks old. Now, they might be a little older, but they're still super fragile. And this difference in timing, it's a massive clue for anyone trying to diagnose the problem. If you've got a 2-week-old piglet with diarrhea that just won't quit, your fingers should be pointing straight at this parasite. Okay, so as bad as those gut wreckers are, there's another group of enemies that, well, they can be even more terrifying. We call them the silent killers. And for good reason. These are the diseases that kill so fast, you often don't even see any signs of sickness.
And here we have two completely different paths that lead to the same awful result. You've got Clostridium novi. Its weapon? A toxin that literally produces gas inside the animal, causing gangrene and rotting tissue from the inside. Then, on the other side, you've got edema disease. This one uses a powerful toxin to attack the entire circulatory system, damaging blood vessels so they start leaking fluid all over the body.
The speed of a C. novi infection is just terrifying. It all starts when the bacteria find a way in, maybe through a tiny cut. Once they're inside, boom, they start pumping out these powerful toxins. Gas builds up incredibly fast in the muscles and liver. The tissues literally start to die, and that leads to organ failure and sudden death. It's that quick.
And that's why it earns the name silent killer. So often, the only symptom is finding a dead animal that looked perfectly fine just hours ago. You only find out what happened after the fact, during a post-mortem, when you see a liver just riddled with gas bubbles and turned this really distinct dark chocolate color. It's a shocking sight.
Now, edema disease is a different story. It follows a very specific schedule, and it's all tied to the massive stress of weaning. Think about it. On day 0, a piglet's entire world gets turned upside down. New food, new pen, new friends, it's a lot. And that stress is the opening these bacteria need. The peak risk time is about a week or two later. That's when certain toxin-producing E. coli start to take over in the gut. But the crazy part is, you don't even see the symptoms until after that, and by then, it can be way too late.
So you hear E. coli, you hear gut, and you immediately think diarrhea, right? Of course you do. But that's what makes edema disease so sneaky. Diarrhea is almost never a big sign. So what are the signs then?
The signs are just weird, and they're all over the body, because this isn't really an infection, it's a poisoning. It often hits the biggest, best-looking pigs in the group. They're the ones that just suddenly die. You might see that classic swelling, the edema, around their eyelids and face. Because the toxin messes with the brain, you'll see them get wobbly or act strange. And get this, there are two really unique clues: a strange high-pitched squeal, and this is a big one, a low body temperature, not a fever. The toxin actually messes with the pig's internal thermostat.
All right, so we've met the bad guys. I know, it sounds pretty bleak, but farmers are definitely not helpless here. So let's shift gears and talk about how you fight back. Let's look at the defense strategy.
A good defense is all about having multiple layers of protection. It really comes down to a few key pillars. First, you've got vaccination. You vaccinate the sows, and they pass that amazing immunity right onto their piglets through that first milk. Second, and this is a big one, is hygiene. I'm talking about super strict cleaning and disinfection to just destroy these bacteria and their tough-as-nails spores. Then, of course, there's medication when you need it to treat an outbreak. And finally, and this is maybe the most important for something like edema disease, is management. Just being smart about diet changes and reducing stress around weaning can make all the difference.
So, when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway? Well, fighting these invisible enemies isn't a one-time thing. It's a constant, proactive battle. The real goal isn't just treating sick animals. It's about managing the entire environment, from top to bottom, to stop these diseases before they can even get started. It really makes you appreciate the incredible amount of work and dedication it takes to protect these vulnerable little animals.